Welcome, welcome, alchemists. Welcome to our class number 3 for module 1. And in this class, we're going to go deeper into the egg diagram, which is the psychosynthesis model of the psyche. And so before we get started, as we always do, we're going to do our grounding and centering meditation.
So, I know that some of you are actively in a place where you're parenting, or you might be navigating around, but if you're able to, just for this time, we're going to give ourselves a few minutes here just to tune in, as we do with all of our calls. We get into this regular practice doing so, and with that, sorry, there's somebody else in the waiting room. Let go. So what this looks like today is a little distinction within the grounding meditation, but it starts with our normal coming into our space that we're at, and as we're able to bring our eyes to a close, tuning out the outside world and the outside distractions, as it were, that might be there. And what it is when we close our eyes, we get to actually go inward. We get to go within ourselves, even though we can still hear and feel and think and all the things. It just cuts out some of that outside distractions. And giving thanks for all that is outside, but then bringing ourselves to a deep inner awareness with a deep inhale in together, a gentle exhale. Another inhale in together. And another gentle exhale. And in our next inhale, let's all inhale together gratitude. And relax and exhale any tension. And notice if there's anything that's pulling us to any particular part of our operating system, as it were. Are we being pulled into our thoughts? Are we being pulled into our feelings? Are we being pulled into our emotions, our body? And can we just sit in the center of this space on the next inhale in, and again exhaling. We're inviting into the center, becoming the observer. The observer of the mind, the thinking, the observer of the feelings, and the observer of the emotion. Inhale. And as we've been working with polarities, just noticing if we can let go of anything that's pulling us into any particular direction and just allow that pendulum within ourself to come to a place of stillness where there's no pulling or pushing or forcing, there's just being. Let go of those different parts of self that are pulling us and find this beautiful crystalline rose quartz pendulum on the string of a silk golden thread that comes to straight center right up and down in our spine, connecting us with our root chakra, the base of our sit bones, all the way to the top of our head. Gentle silk golden thread anchored with love. And our next inhale, let's breathe in through our root chakra. If you feel the inhale coming in, and exhale through the top of our head. Inhale through the top of our head. Exhale through the root chakra. allowing the breath to cleanse and open our channel to receive the beautiful, beautiful energies of each one of us on the call and the energies of what will be shared today. Giving yourselves a minute to notice, or a second to notice, how easy it is to let go of the polarities pulling on us in each or any direction. I need to be this, I need to be that. I'm triggered here, I'm triggered there, just letting go. Find just stillness and a few breaths. And for any of us that are feeling anything that is other than perfect health, perfect peace, and perfect love, taking a moment and sending love, peace to those parts of ourselves for love. Moment. Areas of congestion and discomfort, just sending love and breathing into those parts of ourselves. One more big deep inhale in together. And as we exhale, we can let our eyes jump back in. Oh.
Yummy.
Thank you, thank you.
You may be that. Grounding meditation.
Hopefully you're all able to breathe in through your nose, especially you, Mike.
Yes, and welcome, Caitlin. I saw you come in. I'm happy that you joined us today.
Yay.
Yay.
Yes, very happy. It was very funny. It all worked out. My 2 o'clock client texted me at 5 a.m. So perfect.
You know?
It was meant to be.
Meant to be. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you, client.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I love it so much. Excellent. So let's get right on. We're going to go over egg diagram, and this diagram will become your best friend and just a guide to navigate your psyche and to really understand the different dimensions, the different levels that you do have access to that you may not even be aware of. There's a lot of different resources that lie within the whole spectrum or our multidimensionality.
Mm-hmm.
And in a quote in one of his letters, Freud said, "I'm interested only in the basement of the human being. Psychosynthesis is interested in the whole building." So we're going to be looking at all the different aspects of the self.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, so by the way, we're going to take some time and talk about some of the polarities, and I just wanted to give voice to, as we move into the egg diagram and as we move through the different foundational aspects of transpersonal psychology and psychosynthesis models, that we are working with polarities. There's a polarities of like, there's an excited part of myself and there's a fearful part of self, you know, similar to what I think Regina was sharing in the chat earlier today. But then, so there's these kind of like pulling from left to right. I'm feeling this, and I'm also feeling this, and the synthesis of those two in the center. That's what's been the homework or soul work over the last few weeks. And now we're getting into where we're bringing in this it's almost like an up and a higher and a lower. So the egg diagram that you see on your screen is really introduced in 1934 by Roberto Assagioli. And it's a view of the human personality by integrating the theories that were at the time that hold true still to today. And the egg diagram, it's outlining 3 different levels of consciousness. You have the physical, the emotional, and the mental. And also there's intuitive energies that we experience through sensing, feeling, thinking, and intuition. So the lower part of the egg, the lower unconscious, could be, and in some ways is goes directly in with like the polarity map, but we're bringing in awareness, like what is the lower unconscious. It could be triggered awake at any moment, and understanding that there's a lower, it's unconscious, so we don't necessarily see it in our conscious mind. We don't know that it's there until it gets tickled awake, and then it becomes conscious. Like, you know, I'm not going to even say like by a show of hands, but we're not walking around all the time in a triggered, you know, judgmental space or fearful space, but fear comes up, judgment comes up. That would be a lower unconscious. It's not something that's like consciously here all the time. And then there's the superconscious, which is demonstrated in the egg as the top. And the superconscious is this place of connectedness, unity consciousness. Some people could say Christ consciousness. It's represented also by the star at the top of the true self, the capital S self. So essentially in this model, you've got lower unconscious, and you've got the superconscious. And then you also have the middle field of consciousness, which is like the right here, right now. I'm conscious that we're on a call. I'm conscious that we're on Zoom. I'm conscious that I'm looking at a screen with images and pictures, and I'm feeling a certain way. I'm in the conscious. But then there's the middle unconscious as well, which is where the superconscious and the lower unconscious are existing kind of around us, but they're not necessarily conscious in our thoughts and in our feelings and the awareness every day. And, you know, going into this, you know, in a deeper fashion, each one of these directions with, if we're in the middle of this egg, as Christian, as John Cooper, as Lisa, as Eric, as Tessno, all of us, we're sitting in the middle of the egg, we've got a certain level of consciousness. Can we imagine at any time that we could be, and there's the possibility of the middle unconscious, the lower unconscious, and the superconscious all actually being conscious at the same time? Do you think that that's possible? Show of hands. Yeah. So this is where working with polarity maps and working with these different maps begin to expand or open the aperture, right? Like if we're looking at like through like a lens of our third eye of our conscious awareness, where we are becoming through these foundational aspects of psychosynthesis aware that there are these parts of self, and then they are like, well, you know, and initially there's a act of will to be like, okay, what is this? I'm aware that this is happening. And then it becomes more and more integrated, and it becomes like, you know, integrated, if you will.
Yeah, beautiful. So that's basically like an overview of the egg. So now we're going to go into each section so that you fully understand what each of these areas are mean and what do they hold as far as our consciousness. And we'll keep using the same graphic over and over again because it's the best representation of it. And yeah, and we'll go through it one by one. So we'll start with the lower unconscious. And the lower unconscious is, you can see it at the base of the diagram, and it encompasses all unconscious physical needs, such as well-being, discomfort, hunger, sexual desires, aggression, and various urges. They all lie within the lower unconscious. These blind and instinctive drives regulate habits like sleep, eating, and other psychological processes. It is also where repressed and traumatized childhood experiences are stored, which can resurface as fear, anxiety, shame, or pain under certain conditions. And I will give you, you'll get a report of this at the end. So you can take some notes if you want, but you'll have access to, go back to this in more detail. So the realm of the lower unconscious is egocentric, right? And it ensures basic survival, protection, and security, while also housing early childhood instincts, emotions, and fantasies, right? That represent the inner child and foundational patterns, both positive and negative, right? So all that material, right? All that material from childhood, it is all being housed in the lower unconscious. Now, the lower unconscious is a vital source of energy, spontaneity, and playfulness, right? So this is something that we may not necessarily know about it, right? Because we're so used to thinking as like the repressed emotions, the trauma, and all of that. But at the same time, it really is, it's a playfulness that fuels intimate relationships, that provides confidence to face the world and that supplies the drive to fight for what we need. So you can start to see, right, if there is in your life where you've had maybe trouble with, intimate relationships, or even connecting to playfulness and spontaneity, right, that may indicate, right, that this is where some of the beliefs, some of the experiences that you might be operating from the lower unconscious. So the lower unconscious is the foundation of the personality, and its integration is essential for personal psychosynthesis, right? Because it will enable us to then utilize its resources effectively versus operating from a trigger space, operating from fears, operating from wounding, and all of that, right? So when the self identifies predominantly with this region, it becomes dominated by its needs and its values. So again, you can kind of pinpoint whether for yourself, right, where you may be operating from, or maybe you may notice somebody that you know that is, right, operating from this level of consciousness. And so, for example, someone who's overly focused on material security and family safety may be drawing their sense of identity primarily from the lower unconscious, based on childhood experience. Okay, moving on. If there are any questions you can ask, or we can kind of go through the egg, and then at the end, we can also open up for questions and clarification.
Yeah, if you have any questions, you can just unmute and hop in.
Yeah. And I would like someone to read this slide, please.
Yeah. Beautiful slides.
Thank you.
Yeah, you don't need to raise your hand. You can just hop in and read
Yeah,
it. Go for it.
I'm here. The instincts and drives of the lower unconscious are not enemies to be eradicated, but energies to be understood, guided, and harmonized with higher aspirations.
Right, so this is what Adam was talking about. So it is first to become conscious of what our unconscious material is, right, and where we may be operating from. And then, as we're going to learn through the training, be able to harmonize those energies, be understood, guided, and harmonized with the higher aspects of the self, which the higher aspects of the egg, right, the superconscious and the self. Beautiful. And that's one thing I love about this material too, that it's not about, right, oh, this is bad, my traumas are bad. None of it. It's all, important material that we need. And we can integrate it in a way that it supports our growth and supports our expression in the world.
Yeah, and the spiritually inclined communities, or those who start doing the work, we say shadow work, shadow work, shadow work, shadow work. What does that actually mean? And bringing the lower unconscious into the conscious, shining a light upon it. And what it is, like, oh, I've thought I've done this work and gotten rid of this part of myself. That's a trap. It's about, oh, I have this shameful part of myself, but I'm not shame, right? And how that actually lower unconscious can also goes directly into the polarities. So that lower unconscious can be a childhood experience that then generates a polarity of, I'm ashamed, so I'm just going to hide, as a polarity. Or I'm ashamed, so I'm going to be extra, so people will find value in me because I'm secretly ashamed, and not even being aware that shame is running the show as this frequency. See, so that's where the polarities and the lower unconscious, but then, in a space of pure awareness and will, and the superconscious, it's like, it's all neutral, it's just information. But going into the next slide, we're going to be focusing now, we're coming up one level into the middle unconscious. So the middle unconscious contains psychological processes similar to those of the rational mind, the educated individual, like the thinking. And these processes operate behind the scenes, right? It's like before entering consciousness, but they're still there, or like a step between the lower unconscious and the consciousness. And this level holds energies tied to relationships, to status, self-esteem, as well as higher emotions and rational beliefs, such as life, such as political or religious or social attitudes. This is where we start to kind of create that aspect of the personality. So the lower unconscious is where all the childhood beliefs, kind of like, the personality starts to be generated. And then we come up into this middle unconscious. To me, it's almost like coming into adolescence and young adulthood, where we start to form opinions and beliefs around what feels good to me, this religion, that religion, but all being informed by the lower unconscious. Right? So it stores conscious self-image, the enabling self-expression, boundary development, or maybe lack of boundary development, and the pursuit of identity through friendships, through belonging, through social roles, societal roles. Also, this is where creativity and talents that support our life path also emerge at this level. And we also find here inhibitions and fears and frustrations rooted in challenges or traumas from adolescence. This is generated in this critical time of our self-conscious personality and identity, as I mentioned. And so the unresolved issues any unresolved issues that are coming from the lower unconscious or in the unhidden often influence relationships. They influence work. They influence self-worth. They influence like childish or self-sabotaging behaviors. And so integration of these energies fosters self-awareness and time for reflection. It's like the unconscious comes up in the center, and then we're able to reflect upon these things that are becoming more present and ask ourselves, does this serve? What does this part of me need? The upper part of the middle unconscious contains holistic mental energies that inspire self-actualization. And this is where the personality culminates, motivating us to create meaningful and successful life. We're gathering these different attributes and like creating our purpose from these things that make us who we are. And then when we self-identify as primarily with this middle unconscious region, unresolved issues in the lower unconscious may surface, but addressing and integrating these energies paves the way for personal growth and balance. This is like a place where it's almost like bringing the lower unconscious into the waiting room, right? And like we're sitting as like the doctor in the center of this waiting room, and we're able to begin to integrate how these lower unconscious beliefs and traumas and fears can kind of come up into everyday life, but we're able to look at it through this higher mind.
Beautiful. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Who would like to read the next slide? Also a reminder to communication out there.
Yeah,
right?
as you're able to just put any communications to the side.
In the middle
Claudia
unconscious
broke
lies
up.
the bridge between the instinctive and the aspirational, a dynamic field where values, relationships, and creativity take form.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So do you see that like there's the instinctive stuff is in that lower unconscious, and then this is the bridge between that and what we aspire to ultimately create. So if I have learned instinctual, let's say for instance, like holding on, but my aspiration says that I want to be gifting in part of like in service or donating or being in, especially this time of year, we want to go give back, but I've got this like instinct that says I have to hold it all, otherwise I'm not safe. So this is where we get to build that bridge to just start bringing up and teasing awake these different aspects in the lower unconscious into this conscious.
Thank you, baby. All right, I just need to remember to speak close to the mic for those of you who didn't hear me before. Okay. Perfect. So let's move on back to our egg diagram. And so now we're going to go into the higher and the unconscious, or higher unconscious, or also called the superconscious.
Mm-hmm.
So moving up, we have the higher unconscious or superconscious, which represents the transpersonal realm. This is where consciousness expands beyond the individual, right? This is why this type of psychology is called transpersonal and not just, regular psychology. And this is where, essentially this area of the transpersonal foster the holistic awareness that connects us to something greater than just our limited personalities, right? So experiences that we have in the superconscious realm, in the transpersonal realm, include, right, that feeling of oneness, that feeling of transpersonal love, where the boundaries are dissolved and you feel one with humanity, right? That unity. That all comes from that transpersonal realm. And this is also where we draw inspiration for human rights, right? For universal ethics, scientific discoveries lie or come from this transpersonal realm. Artistic abilities, right? You can probably have ideas of like different artists and different, that they're, you can tell they're tapping into something that is not our ordinary human realm. And so when the self rises to the superconscious, and we're going to look into the self, the I that's in the middle, in just a moment. But when the self rises, right, like in meditation, just allow to expand, we're able to then, our sense of identity expands. But the superconscious can also descend into our personal consciousness, right? Influencing and altering our identity. So you can do it both ways, through meditation, or you can also bring it down and bring it down into your sense of self. And so, however, subconscious energies can be repressed, right? So I should say superconscious energies can be repressed if the self is overly identified with personal needs and values, right? And we're going to keep looking into that, right? So where are we? And as we go through the egg, you can tune into where you might be identifying yourself with the most, right? But once that the self releases and is able to access the transpersonal, then those energies from the transpersonal are able to being forced through our personal bridge to bring more meaning and more purpose into our lives. And I have a quote I would love someone to read, please.
I read it.
Higher self dwells in the realm of superconscious, which transcends individuality and is connected to the universal spirit. It calls us to recognize our role within a greater harmonious whole.
Beautiful. Yep. There is definitely a sense of expansion. And at the end of the class, or right before the end, we're going to walk you through a meditation that is going to help you to connect with this expanded sense of self.
And just a little bookmark here, it's like, oh, wow, who doesn't want to be up here in the superconscious all the time? Let me just be in the superconscious all the time. Every one of us, I think, on the call has heard the word bypass, spiritually bypass or whatever. So it's like, oh, if I'm existing in the superconscious, I'm connected with all things, but yet there's this foundation in the lower unconscious, or we're too much in our idealism and our materialism. That gets old too. It's not about like we're trying to achieve one aspect. This is a whole aspect that is a model that shows everything that's happening all at once. And there's, ways to actually bring these, build bridges in between these different aspects. Then we get into the area of the collective unconscious.
Yep. And then just what, just to kind of add to what you said, and that's exactly what Assagioli said at the beginning, the very first class we talked about it, right? Like, it's not about transcending and leaving our body, connecting to that universality. It's about bringing that forth into our personal, so that we can actually access those resources in our everyday life.
Right. So you'll notice in the diagram on the outer edges, written on a vertical way, is the collective unconscious. So this is where, we've got the I and all the things that are within Adam and Aliness and Lisa and Claudia and all the things. But then this collective unconscious spans from the lower unconscious to the superconscious and represents the psychological environment that surrounds us, right? All the outside influence. We're constantly in this telepathic connection, believe it or not, prescribe and say true or not, where the world is influenced by humanity's shared experiences, past and present. Like if a war in some area of the world that awareness, if we're aware of that, is a collective experience, right? Everybody that feels like what it feels like if there's a war present, not peace on earth, right? That's a collective influence. So through different therapies and meditations and things, we may uncover that energies that we thought were personal are actually collective, right? Like this isn't mine, so to speak, or this is being influenced by something. For instance, you might recognize generational behaviors or traits within our family lineage, or notice how societal thinking and feelings such as love, fear, or trust impact us from a distance. So if we can just notice for a moment that we were to tune into the collective earth energies, we're all full of love and peace and abundance, be a completely different experience than an experience of fear and scarcity and separation. That's where the collective influence has an influence within, well, at least in the map. We're not going to say that's capital T truth, but in this thinking, in this cosmology, we're going to say that outside influences can affect the inner center. And that's not only in physical awareness, at an energetic level as well. So these impersonal energies flow through humanity. We give them personal meaning when we identify with these things.
Yeah, exactly. And so how powerful it is, right? To be able to recognize that, right? To be able to recognize what's actually ours, what's our personal, and what is generational. And be able to identify, right? When we get into this identification and identification, learning to disidentify from those aspects of self that are just in the unconscious, that are might perhaps being projected onto us. We've raised, right? But it's not really who we are, and we know it. And so through this process, we can really get to the core. It's almost like we're peeling the onion, right? Peeling out the layers of what is not ourself, what is not who we are, and then really come into that I that we're gonna explore. We continue to explore through the process. So I have another slide. Who would like to read this one?
Beautiful slides.
Thank you so much. I have fun with it.
Many of the patterns and behaviors we perceive as personal are in fact collective and inherited from cultural, familial, or historical influences embedded within the collective unconscious.
Yep. So who relates to that? Who actually can see, right?
Sure.
A lot of it, right? That is, it's coming from the unconscious. Amazing. So it's good to know that we are not our, right, collective unconscious patterns and beliefs. And I have another slide, actually. Who would like to read the next?
While the collective unconsciousness can dominate and shape us unconsciously, it is through self-awareness that we can engage with these energies consciously, transforming them into forces for personal and collective growth.
Boom, right? So here is the psychosynthesis of it. So it's, again, becoming aware of it and then actually transforming them into forces that can support our own personal and collective transformation. So we can actually be a contribution to humanity, a contribution to the collective. And, but it definitely takes awareness, self-awareness, and to, consciously works with these energies.
Yeah, and a little off script here for a minute, like, you hear Gandhi, be the change we wish to see, and different teachers of the past, like our master teachers, we can say. So it's what is the culture that I want to, from a place of awareness, create in my local home, my local community, my local workplace, or whatever it might be, because they mentioned culture. So if there's a culture of like leading by fear, because that's how things have been done for the years, of like, you do something, you get smacked on the side of the head and you won't do it again, right, gentlemen? Like when we're working in the workforce, we put on this thick skin. I'm not saying that the ladies don't get smacked on their head, but it's a way of being with the men in the space where we just kind of like bust each other's chops, so to speak, and things like that. But that, in that ball busting, excuse the phrase, way of being, what is the culture? That would we want our child or somebody else's child or any children that we know to come into a world where they're constantly being, hey, what are you, some kind of blah, 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 or what's wrong with you? Like that, those phrases, like, would we ever say that to anybody that we care about? You know, that kind of thing. Caitlin's coming back in again. This is where there's like a, you know, for lack of a better term, responsibility as to the collective that we are generating from our own stuff. And like when we're in the lower unconscious or in a polarity that's pulling us into something other than perfect north or centered space of I amness, that is an influence going out, as well as we're being influenced coming in from our families and our upbringing, culture. Does that make sense?
Yep, beautiful. Thank you, baby. So now we move into the self, and not this transpersonal self just yet, but the I. So we're going to focus at the center of the diagram, right? That's the self that we connect with. We've connected to this self during meditation. And this self is the observer, right? This is the core of the personality and the source of pure self-awareness and will. So surrounding it, as we've gone over, is the field of consciousness. And this is where we experience our thoughts, our feelings, any sensations from the body. All of those arise from the level of the unconscious, right? Now, intuition comes directly from the soul. And we're going to look into what the soul and the capital self at the very top is. And so the observer, that I, right, that center, it reflects and interprets these energies, right, that are coming through both the superconscious and the lower unconscious using psychological functions. And we're going to go over what psychologically functions in a later module, right? And so essentially, being able to reflect, right, the aspects from the higher unconscious and the lower unconscious. So most people identify with the contents of their consciousness, such as thoughts, emotions, right? Rather than recognizing they are distinct from them, right? And that's something that we've already been doing in this class and even in the master classes, is be able to disidentify from the content and identify with the observer. So observing the difference that we've experienced is the first step towards the personal psychosynthesis, right? Creating a stable center from which to master the energies of the personality and the soul. So the center is kind of, the self is kind of lying right at the center, right? And it's going to become that center stable source where we can operate from. And so Assagioli says, will anybody would like to read this slide?
I got it. We are dominated by everything which our self becomes identified. We can dominate and control everything from which we disidentify ourselves.
Boom.
Yep.
I just got chills,
Yeah.
right? And so this is it. This is like one of the main keys of liberation, of freedom, right? When we can disidentify and connect to that self. And so, for example, you can say, right, a wave of anger is affecting me, right? That would be a way to acknowledge that there is anger, right? Instead of saying, I am angry, right? Because when we say, I am angry, we're meaning the self is angry, right? And so it helps to separate it. And we're going to be practicing this moving forward, right? We're going to separate the observer from the emotions, right? Because that really allows you to even give you a sense of ownership and responsibility. And so from that perspective, right, I am feeling a wave of anger, for example, I am feeling anger, you can even say, then, you know, you're able, the self can project and transform the energies. So if you say you're angry, you have identified, you can't control it. You're just it, right? You're immersed in it. You've become completely taken over by it, right? But then when you become and practice from the observer more, the observer mode, then you can transform those energies as opposed to being the receiver of them, right? Just feeling the feelings without any sense of control, without any sense of ownership. And so the different psychosynthesis techniques that we're going to be exploring throughout the modules will allow you to reconnect to the center of the self and be able to connect, and operate from a sense of authenticity and a true sense of the self.
Sorry about that. I was turning the camera back on. I wanted to just take a moment here and NLP. Some people hear about it, and I think that there's a culture, at least in our home, right, where we start to be. It's interesting. We'll start using language like I am experiencing anger. I'm experiencing being frustrated. Firsthand experience within the relationship. It's an amazing thing. Like I'm experiencing, feeling whatever feelings can come up in a moment in a relationship. I'm experiencing frustration versus I am frustrated. And then what happens in an NLP functioning, right, is if I say I am angry or I am frustrated, I'm actually programming my thoughts, my feeling, and like it's actually could be bringing up the lower unconscious of frustrated that could actually be a collective thing. Oh, yeah. And then aside from that, also there's a phrase that gets used often in, I don't know what keeps happening with our camera over here, but we'll get that fixed in a second. But there's a phrase that gets used quite often that's I am that I perceive the moment that I perceive it. So if I'm perceiving judgment or I'm perceiving anger, it's being generated from the self. It's like I'm generating anger so that I'm perceiving anger in that moment. And if we can create languaging, and this is an invitation as we work with this course, like I am experiencing or I'm feeling a wave of, it actually starts to shift things around where it creates a little, just a window to look through to be like, oh, wow, I am not the anger, but I'm experiencing the anger. And in any way, in everyday language, I am feeling it. Yeah, that's it. Like if I'm in a business negotiation or I'm with the friends or with a relationship or we're going to be together with family over the holidays or what have you, and we notice a trigger that comes up that takes us into a polarity and tickles something from the lower unconscious away, it's very easy to get, let me rephrase that. It's possible to have a wave of this feeling, thoughts, and emotion of they did this to me, go into the victim mindset that goes into either hyper controlling or let me just get the fuck out of here, excuse my French, which are like the lower unconscious comes in and creates the polarity that then has the behavior, and then we become that thing that happened to us or is an external collective consciousness type of thing versus like, whoa, I'm feeling a certain way. What do I need to regulate myself in this moment? Typically, it's just a breath. You're like, wow, I'm experiencing this. You see how it creates a little bit of a window there to like look through and be like, okay, this isn't what's actually happening, but this is what I'm perceiving. And if I choose to act from it, then I'm projecting my perception and creating the reality of separation, right?
All right, see if we can get this camera on.
Press the power button. And
right.
We're back.
Awesome. So now we're going to move into the ego, the I, and the personality. Did I change this? There we go.
Yep.
Yep.
So I see some messages in the chat, but I'm going to see. I believe I understand what. Okay. Yep. Very good stuff, Tessno. As we continue on, there's a even though this map is a simple egg on a screen, right? We get into the ego or the I, distinct from the self, the capital S higher self. Ego and the I and the personality, this part of the middle. And by ego, we're like have all of our survival mechanisms and everything that creates Adam in this operating system. With all of these things that are all around, if I look to left and right and front and back, I got my middle unconscious. I look up, hey, superconscious, what's up there? I look down, hey, lower unconscious, what's going on? And all this is like creating an identity. And from the understanding of Assagioli's psychosynthesis, it's helpful to compare its ideas with popular psychological concepts for a moment. So Freud and others would describe the ego as a structure that provides a sense of identity, lowercase I identity, organized around rational values and reflecting cultural norms and fitting in. The ego identity is tied to roles like I am a parent, and I am a spouse, and I am a professional. See how I'm identifying with those things? When in reality, I have the role of, playing parent. So it's differing fundamentally in the transpersonal aspect than it is from typical psychology, because we don't become this identity of like, I am a good, there goes our camera, workspace, and I'm a good worker, I'm a good parent, all these things. So Assagioli's concept of the self differs, emphasizing the pure self, awareness and will. Welcome, Claudia. The one that says on, off. Should be the, yep. Sorry, our battery must be a little bit low on our camera. We went out of town and some things got unplugged. I don't know, must have been the cat. The ego also represents the mind's tendency to separate itself from its surroundings for self-awareness. Like, I am going to separate myself from this feeling or this cultural thing that's happening because I'm not it, So it's like this separation is the ego. Right? It also represents the mind's tendency to, to just continue to separate by the way of the thinking mind. While this is necessary, this contraction often hinders the expansion into the soul, into consciousness, where identity becomes unified, unity consciousness. And their ego remains dominant as long as we are identified with any aspect of it. I am this, I am that, I am this feeling, I am this feeling, I am this role, I am this thing. See what I mean? So depending on one's level of consciousness, the I can shift from being ego-centered to a more individuated and humanistic. There's still the identity of I'm Caitlin, and hi, I'm Adam. We have these two different bodies and things like that, but we can understand and relate from a place of that. We each have an I, and I love your eye, and you love my eye, and we love each other's eye, or we choose to be separate eyes. You see? The superego, which is another aspect of things, it's kind of like halfway between the I and the superconscious. So the superego comprises of moral laws that are internalized in childhood, often shaping behaviors through societal values, and it remains dominant as long as security and safety are prioritized. So in a lot of the times, these triggers can come up that trigger security and safety, and that's when the ego actually gets stronger. Wouldn't we agree? So if I'm not feeling safe, all of a sudden I go into self-preservation mode, which means I need to take care of me. I don't have enough to take care of everybody else. See what I'm saying? And the personality integrates the body, mind, emotions, and true personality emerges when we discover and direct our will towards a chosen goal. Okay? In closing, so ultimately the ego and the superego and personality are distinct from Assagioli's self, which resides in the center of pure awareness. So there's like a distinction here that we're shining a light on that says there's like the lowercase I, that I'm separate, but then there's the uppercase I, which is this superconscious.
Yeah. And the one that is connected to this self, right? So the essentially in psychoanalysis, right? The I would be the ego, but in our case, the I, the self that we're connecting with, is a reflection of the superconscious, the transpersonal energy. So we're actually, our I is going to be reflecting higher aspects of the self and not just the personality. Yeah, the battery's dead and it's not. All right, so who would like to read the next slide?
I can jump in. The heart and soul of psychosynthesis work is to awaken I, awareness and will.
Awareness and will. So that is the essence of the work that we're going to be doing. else. Voice is not going to work. All right. Moving along. So next, we're going to explore the soul and the transpersonal self. So that's the capital S. That's at the very top of the egg. And this is the essence of human consciousness. This is known in various traditions as the higher self. It is called as the Atman, the divine spark, right, that represents a center of pure self-awareness and will. And Assagioli emphasizes that we are this transpersonal self, right? That, well, the personal self, which is the I, is a reflection and emanation of it. It's essentially filtering through, it's filtering, it's radiating the self, and it's filtering through the personality and the mind. So when we connect to the transpersonal self, right, we experience freedom, we experience expansion, and we experience that universality and that sense of unity that, you know, in contrast from just the personal self. And so the soul generates a superconscious, radiating creativity, love, and wisdom and beauty, very much like the sun rays. And that's why you can see that kind of star that's radiating like the sun. And Assagioli used the analogy of the sun a lot to express this concept. And so this soul, right, it's a divine living being that connects us with the cosmos and that is witnessing all levels of consciousness at the same time. Now, it transcends bodily and mental limitations, right? But its purpose is to manifest the universal consciousness through physical expression. And so this soul, transpersonal self, resides in the eternal, beyond time and space, yet works through the personal self to integrate and transform those energies. So we briefly mentioned the bifocal vision earlier on. And so the idea and the goal for all of humanity, but especially for us in this particular program and training, is that we can operate right from that bifocal understanding, bifocal awareness, to know that yes, we have a personal self, but we are also this consciousness, right? We're also this universal self. And the more that we operate and we allow those energies to filter in, the more those qualities will be expressed in the personal. And so essentially the soul bridges the personal and the transpersonal through an illuminated channel, which is often called the silent path. And you can see it in this chart by those dotted lines, essentially. Mm-hmm. And so you can access that, you can connect to that channel, the silent path, through stillness and inner focus. This is why meditation, right? That's always the key in order to be able to access this transpersonal consciousness, these transpersonal realms, because it requires us to tune into the stillness within, right? And requires focus to be able to disidentify from our personal self and access the soul. And so when fully realized, right, when we really, this would be, you know, I would say it's similar to what enlightenment is called, the duality between the soul and the self dissolves, right? And you can, you know, we can name a few names of people that have gone through that process. Adam mentioned Gandhi, Eckhart Tolle, Mother Teresa, you know, Jesus Christ. Like there's people that have been able to transcend and actually dissolve the personality. And so symbolically, the soul is depicted as a star or a sun above the physical, above us, right? Above the physical, emotional, and mental aspects of the personality. And as I mentioned, you know, he utilizes the sun ray as a perfect symbolism to reflect those qualities of the transpersonal self. Excellent. So that is the whole egg. Do we have any questions? And then we will guide you through a meditation where you can tune into these different aspects that we've covered.
Any questions? I will say that while we're waiting for any hands to go up there, that anyone who has worked with alternative healing modalities, whether that's breath work, whether that's working with shamanic ancient traditions, whether that's working with tantric traditions, whether that's, you know, meditation and things like this, right? We're essentially sitting in a, when practiced, let me use a phrase, efficiently or guided properly, right? For ourselves or being guided, that we're essentially sitting in this place of awareness, in this place of I am, not identifying with any particular thing, to be able to observe lower unconscious, to be able to observe superconscious. Wow, there's this that feels like love. It feels so true to me. It's superconscious. And there's also the observation or the loving observer, or yes, Regina, witness, to be able to, you know, reach into the lower unconscious, to these parts of self that have fragmented into I am this and I am ashamed and I am a fearful one, or I am God. Each one of, you know, all of it is true and none of it's true at the same time, right? So being able to observe and witness and bring these aspects of self up into a conscious space to transmute, to ask what these parts of ourself need. This is really the foundation of the polarity work and the egg work that's going to take us into the next module. In the next module, there was actually a mentioning in it in the chat earlier, and I'll go ahead and just give a little teaser here of, you know, the sub-personalities, where there's actually multiple versions of lowercase I that are operating at any time, right? But there's also, if there's multiple of them, none of them are actually the true I. You know what I mean? So it's like we're able to then hold a space of this part of ourselves, or this part of myself, from a place of a loving observer. And some people call it reparenting, but essentially what this is the alchemy or the integration of the parts of self, so that when the same old trigger happens again in life, it doesn't trigger me into this place of that old well-worn groove of becoming the thing, becoming that identity. And then from becoming an identity that is so pulled into, you know, my tunnel vision is on the awareness of this multifocal or bifocal vision of I am this and I am that. And then being able to see the person sitting in front of us, they are this and they are that. Like, I'm so angry right now, and da da da, has become the anger. But being able to be a space, well, do you know that you're not actually the anger? That can actually trigger somebody into a different space versus just being an observer and a witness of, oh, this person's experiencing anger. And then just gently ask questions of ourselves, or even if I know each one of us have shared in our conversations with each other before this class, you know, who said yes to it, to actually be able to hold a space for another person to go through that process also, because eventually the angry one is going to become something other than angry. So then it therefore says in and of itself that it isn't angry. I can experience anger, but the true self is sitting there like, okay, we're going to just experience anger for a while, but then it falls asleep. I like to use the term, the crying baby will eventually go to sleep. So that's this little parts of ourselves as well, like the need to be loved one, the I'm not enough one will eventually go to sleep. And tomorrow the I'm not, oh wow, where did that person, so then that part of me goes. So this is the integration aspect that goes hand in hand with any of these techniques that I mentioned earlier. But now we're actually putting maps to it and having a conversation around it versus just it being conceptual. Does that trigger anything awake for anybody? Anything you'd like to share? Any questions?
Yeah. And I just wanted to add that as we move into the subpersonality work, now you have a map for when and where those subpersonalities may come from. And you may recognize, like, oh, this is definitely from childhood, right? Lower unconscious. Or you can say, no, actually, this is from, this is collective unconscious. This is generational. This is not even mine. Or, right, you know, it could come from can come from the middle unconscious, like Adam mentioned with the teenager. So it's
Yeah.
really helpful to identify, right? To just become aware of those subpersonalities and where do they come from, so they can be easily integrated.
Yeah. One question really quick. I want to see if anybody wants to hop in here. Have you ever noticed with self or other that there's like all of a sudden something happens and this like 13-year-old version pops up? And it's like literally a 13-year-old adolescent enters the room, enters the body, starts to communicate, starts to act out. I don't know, I hate you. You know, that kind of thing. Have you ever noticed that with yourself or with another individual? This is where that middle unconscious comes into play. And it's like, wow, I'm just going to, okay, let me turn this hat on backwards. Now I'm the piss off teenager. And as soon as I say I am the piss, if somebody comes over and tries to love me, or you can be like, if I have to ask for your love, I don't even need it. So then we're just like denying other people's love because we had to ask for it. Distinct from, wow, I'm really experiencing this part of myself. Notice I put my hat back on, so I'm the observer. Now I get to experience this part of myself at 13 that didn't get the love that I needed for whatever reason. I brought home an amazing report card and it was like, yeah, but we got to go, hurry up, your brother's late. So now I made this thing happen and it like anchored in and became a part of my personality. And I don't want to keep banging on the same drum here, but this is literally, we can start seeing these parts of ourselves start to act out in different aspects of life.
Yeah. And you can even recognize, like, depending on how the expression is coming out, you can literally pinpoint how old you were, right? If you're throwing a tantrum,
Yep.
you already know this is from really early on,
Yep.
right? Or if you're rebelling, right, against whatever it is that you're doing, then you know it's coming from that. So
Yeah,
it's
the
actually
rebel.
kind of fun exercise, you know, when we can look at ourselves and observe ourselves without any judgment, right?
Yep.
Just simply observing, a loving observer of those aspects of the self. So does anybody, let's see, any questions? I wanted to maybe go through just the homework. We kind of a little like a lighter class today, and we'll do the meditation in just a moment. So basically, I just want to go through it before we do the meditation, because we're going to kind of come out of a different space. So,
And hold on, this is our homework that we're going to have until our next class, which we're going to kind of go through those next dates, but we're going to have some time over the holidays to really deepen into this experience, just like we had some time working with polarities, and many of you shared. Actually, I want to acknowledge each one of you for the deep work, especially those who have shared, like, hey, this is a polarity that I'm noticing. It's really wonderful to see that you're doing the work. And then here's this deeper soul work. Now we're going into the egg diagram.
Yep, and the exploration of the egg. So the number one is going to be, you know, spend 10 minutes or more, whatever, you know, time, observing your thoughts, your feelings, and your sensations. And just recognize, right, when you become identify with the emotion or the thought. Right? And so if you want to, you know, reflect further into how this distinction, right, I am anger versus a wave of anger is affecting me, or I'm feeling anger. And see if you can reflect on how this distinction impacts your sense of self, right? Feeling the difference between being angry and over-identifying versus just expressing and recognizing that there's just an emotion moving through. And then the second one is basically, we're going to use the ED diagram, and I actually have it right here. Pull it up. That one right there. You each are going to get a link of this blank egg diagram. You're going to print it, and you're going to label it with the lower, middle, and higher unconscious. And we want you to sit with this and find some examples, right, of experiences that that you have, or energy associated with the different parts of the egg diagram, right? So let's say instincts or repressed emotions, any traumas that are coming up that would go in the lower part of the egg, or we're talking about creativity, we're talking about values, we're talking about relationships that would go in the middle,
Personality, yeah.
personality that would go in the middle, or if you're tuning into aspirations, right? Inspiration, intuition, all that actually happens on the higher aspect of the self.
Yeah.
And then the most important part of this, and this is the kind of like an invitation for you to be with right now, is to see which area feels most dominant in your life and why. So come prepared to answer this question. When we come back after the break, we would like to see your findings in regards to where you're operating from.
Yeah.
Which side, what's more dominant, and why.
And what that can look like is actually writing down in the lower part of the egg, the different experiences and things that are coming up. I notice that I go into judgment when this happens, so that this is like just writing judgmental or being judged or whatever that might be in that lower unconscious space. I actually love to then take some colored pencils and color this diagram and just kind of like create a creative aspect of it as well. So have fun with it. And then, you can even write on the back of it or what have you, as those of you who might be printing it out. If you're not printing it out, you can lots of people use digital. You could actually bring that into Canva or something as a template. We're going to share that with you, and then you can do it in Canva. But it's a creative process also. It's a beautiful way. And I'll just shape this. Like if we were to look at this egg diagram right now, and we all took time for 20 minutes or so to do that work, and then 3 weeks from now we did the same thing, it would probably change, because it's like an oscillating energy. Sometimes we get pulled into the lower unconscious, sometimes in the higher conscious, sometimes I'm in the very strong personality aspect in the middle. And this is why having this soul work to do over a period of time is to allow, maybe you have multiple printouts and you can notice and circle which one consistently comes up, because that could be the part of the whole that is calling to be integrated, that is most dominant, right? And it's not about camping out. Like if we notice ourselves camping out in the lower unconscious and shadow work, it's also about finding balance in the thing and giving ourselves time to go into the higher.
Yeah, exactly. And then lastly, I would always add a bonus soul work for anybody who would like to take it even deeper. And so then you would then take this into a personal psychosynthesis. So choose one unresolved tension that you feel, right, in different parts of your unconscious, and then reflect how you can balance and harmonize these aspects. And after that, just take write one actionable step that you can take towards personal psychosynthesis or personal synthesis within this area.
Mm-hmm.
All right, any questions? I'm sharing the screen.
We got there.
Yep, we'll do that in a moment. Any questions? Everybody feels pretty clear with the egg diagram? Yep. You feel confident
Is this
to work with
serving
it?
and creating information that's making sense? And yeah, thumbs up, John Cooper. I like that background. Thumbs up, Christian.
Awesome. Okay, so should I share the class dates?
Did we lose
Before,
Mike?
I think so.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, so I'll just share my screen one more time, just to share the upcoming calls for the next module. Okay. So you can, take a note of that. So we're gonna have our first call January 6th on Monday. And then our second call on the 13th. And then we're gonna take the third week off, which is integration week.
Mm-hmm.
That's January 20th. And then we'll have our last class on Monday, January 27th. Yep, and we are I know Masha's not here, I think she's traveling. We are exploring the possibility to possibly start the call a little earlier. We do have a call at 4 o'clock every 2 weeks. That's kind of been standing. And so, what is it, 2 p.m.?
Yeah, that's the request. There's, you can stop sharing your screen right now so we can just have a conversation with y'all.
There we go.
See you in the proper place. So there's a few, actually, there were some folks that were not on the earlier calls that have shared that there are some conflicts that they have in the afternoons on Mondays. And we don't want to keep bouncing things around. We're still in module 1, and it's like, okay, 3 o'clock Eastern, every Monday is what we're going to do. Here we are Wednesday. Through this holiday time, things move around. But there's a request on the table to move the call from 3 p.m. Eastern to 2 p.m. Eastern. Move it up an hour. And that would allow these other calls that happen in the afternoon to be so. I don't know if anybody has any issue with that, but we figure we would take some time just as we wrap up the call today to bring this into a conversation and see if there's any, like, that doesn't work for me, I'm already, whatever might be there, so we can, work to hit everybody's, constraints, if you or circumstances.
Does anybody have trouble, or not trouble, but it's issues with that time?
John saying no. I know Mike and John. Mike has another meeting or something that he didn't want to move it later, so I think earlier might work.
I mean, it looks like once I'm done with training, I'll probably be doing mids. So 2 p.m. might actually work better as well.
Okay.
So let's start at
That
10.
would be great for me, Mike says. Nice. Okay. So it sounds like
All right,
it's
perfect. So
a thing.
we have one person that's not on the call that we need to make sure that
Yeah, but I think
we
she
might have
can
to
move
make
things.
some arrangements for
Yeah,
that.
Masha's got a leadership team call, but I think she is the leader of that leadership team, so she would be able to. Christian. And yes, Christian?
Thanks. That would be 2 to 3:30 or
Yes.
2 to
Yeah.
4. 2 to 3. Thank you.
On Mondays, right? Still on
On Mondays, yes,
On
still on
Mondays.
Mondays.
Okay.
And we're doing our best to keep calls to 1.5 hours, but there will be some calls that we may go over, and we may actually need the 2 hours. Like, we want to make sure that we are serving you. So I think we're doing pretty good, but just putting it out there. Some of them, we might need a little more time. We want to, of course, we want to keep it to 1.5 hours, but we also want to make sure that we're serving,
Yeah.
serving the material, and especially when we have calls where we have more sharing, we might need a little more time.
2 hours have been blocked. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, especially as we get into the deeper work where we're doing some group stuff and
Yeah.
breakout rooms and things like that, like we don't, it's hard to determine, and okay, we think it's going to be this. Right now we're really getting into a lot of this, earlier calls are very didactic, you know what I mean? Like, we're going through, here's some different concepts and things like that. And there will be a portion of the calls as we go on that are still that way, but there's also the experiential aspect of things. And I know for me personally, experiential is how I learn. Different than reading a book. You read a book and take a test. That's why I suck as a student. But if you want me to, like, go build something, I'm your guy. Miss Lisa Renee.
I just wanted to share that I thought today really worked well. When you said you were going to cover the material and kind of try to wait till the end, for questions. Because if you notice, we didn't have any questions because we let you get to the end and you explained everything. So I think that's really good if we as a class can try to remember that, just like jot the question down. And if the question is still there at the end of the class, I think that would support a lot. It did today because, we're doing great on time.
Yeah, yeah. And, to your point, like when we come back from the holiday break, after doing some of the egg diagram work, there's going to be some shares on the front end. This is the invitation, because sharing in a group and opening up the conversation is where a lot of the learning can happen. It's like being in practice, right? Like, oh, I know how to speak from a stage because I've seen somebody do it. Okay, go get on stage. You know what I mean? Like, we want to be able to actually come away with embodying these practices through the sharing. But in today's class, we had already we're 2 weeks with the polarity mapping, and a lot of that stuff was already being shared on a regular basis. And also, as we're going to be working with breakouts and in buddy pairs and doing coaching, those shares are going to be shared with somebody else, right? So I agree with you, and I think it's going to be, yes, and we might just break out 10 minutes in the beginning. Anybody have anything that came up for their homework and their soul work? Especially, like, we're going to look at polarities in the egg diagram during the holiday time with family around. Yay!
I know.
I know we're going to
Perfect
have a house full of
opportunity.
like 11 people, so I'm pretty sure I'm going to be retreating to a room into one of my sub-personalities once or twice. during this experience, because if you know me, you know I like things a certain way in my home.
But I-
Really, you?
Perfect.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And I think
Amazing.
sharing is distinct from questions.
Yes,
Yeah.
Right.
exactly. And you're absolutely right. When there's the material that we go through, a lot of those questions can get answered. You know, for me, the egg diagram is one of the key aspects of when we went through our certification that I came away with of like, whoa, you know, here I am going into a alternative healing shamanic experience and being guided, whether that's breath work or whatever that might be, and being guided through. But now I've got this map to understand what's occurring and how I can actually be like, in my mind's eye with my eyes closed, be like, oh, I'm going to go sit in this seat in the center of myself and observe these different things that are coming away versus like, oh my God, I'm having such a terrible experience and I'm ashamed. I'm experiencing shame for this thing, right? That I made myself wrong for, or that somebody else made me wrong for, whatever that might be, right? It's just a really beautiful, beautiful tool. The polarity maps, you know, and also the egg diagram. It's just really exciting to share with all of you. I hope that you're finding value in integrating these tools.
Yep. Okay, so let's walk you through the final meditation where you can have an experience of the egg diagram. So if you want to just take a moment right now, I know we just are in the mental state.
In the meow meow state. Hi, meow meow.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my
what a
goodness.
cutie pie. Yeah, so allow yourself to close your eyes and take a few minutes to simply breathe and quiet yourself. Allowing what we shared, just allowing everything that we've just heard to just be there, observing the sensations in your body, observing your thoughts, observing any conversations you may have in your mind, observing your feelings, and paying special attention to your breathing. So allow yourself to connect with the air that you are breathing in. How does it feel as it enters your nose? How does it feel as it flows down your windpipe and into your lungs? How do the muscles of your chest and your belly respond to the in-breath and the out-breath? And now, is it possible to expand your awareness to include the whole trunk of your body, your back, sides, your shoulders, and your pelvic area? So from your breath to your whole body, expanding your awareness, your whole body. And now, can you widen your awareness even more so that you're also aware of your head, your face, your arms, your hands, your legs, and your feet? Is it possible for you to be aware of your whole body all at once? Now ask yourself, who is aware of this body? What feelings and emotions might you be experiencing right now? become aware of any emotions and feelings during this meditation. And if there are any feelings that may be showing up, are there from earlier, earlier in the day, from before? Just becoming aware of your breath, of your body, and next of your feelings, emotions. Then next, what about your thoughts? Are there any images, any words, any impressions, any judgments, insights, chatter in your mind right now? So just watch them. Let them go by like a movie for just a few moments. Now ask yourself, who is aware of these feelings and these thoughts? Now your attention has been focused inside yourself for the last few minutes. So now notice what it's like to pay attention to your surroundings as well. Feel the temperature and quality of the air. Listen to the sounds, any sounds. And now open your eyes for a few moments and just look around you. Look around. Now ask, who is aware of what is around me? Next, you can close your eyes again as you become aware of your breath, your body, your feelings, your sensation, your thoughts, your surrounding. Who is aware?
Imagine that you can expand your awareness like a balloon. So you're aware of the whole building around you, and then their surrounding area. Perhaps you can hear birds singing outside, or dogs barking, or a car passing. Imagine that you can be aware of life going on in neighboring areas, beyond what you can directly see, hear, and touch. Continue expanding your balloon of awareness to include the entire region where you are located. In your mind, touch the houses and the shops and the office buildings, the forests and the lakes and the streams, the streets and the highways and the people and plants and animals, the rocks and all around you. Who is everywhere and who is aware of all of this in imagination? Now embrace the whole continent, your awareness. Imagine you can silently touch all of the people on the continent as they go about their lives, including specific friends and relatives that you love. As you embrace the whole continent with your awareness, what do you see and hear? What do you feel? What are you aware of? Now expand even more to encompass the whole hemisphere and then the whole planet. Imagine that you can be aware of the beauty and the suffering of the whole planet, all of its living beings. Imagine the planet floating in space, making its journey around. Take some time with this. Now becoming aware of your breath on an inhale. Beautiful, graceful exhale. Be aware of your body sensations and your feelings and your thoughts. Ask yourself, who is aware? Who is aware of the whole planet in one moment and aware of simply breathing out and in the next? Who is aware? And who directs my attention? The gentle inhale in through our nose. The exhaling as we open our eyes. Welcoming back. That's a beautiful meditation that we're happy to share in the future, where it's really taking in from this identification with I into collective awareness. That's why I say multifocal vision, like tuning into all of everything that is and still being in the body. And this is where that, who is the observer? Is it this little I, or is it like, whoa, what's possible? And that practice is really a beautiful practice, especially for those of us who, as the spiritual term would be said, get in our shit, because it shows literally the pinhead of the problem that's being created.
And the more you practice that awareness, right, that expanded awareness, and then bringing it back, right? A powerful exercise that none of us, and I'll speak for myself, but I know we haven't been trained, right? We've been so trained to just focus on the ego. And so to, give yourself the gift. You can always listen to the meditation in the recording, but give yourself that practice in the morning.
Was that Taz Nova wrote, requesting a recording of your voices in moments of shit kidding.
Me too.
It's one of the reasons why we're over here with this technology and the camera keeps shutting off and stuff, because we're going to be creating these different modules and meditations.
Yeah, and the meditations will
put music.
Yeah, break them down, and we'll actually record the meditation separately. That's a good trick, and you can just listen to it and incorporate it into your morning practice.
Yep.
Amazing. So that's what we have for you
That's
today.
it, and that's all.
That's
Now
it, and that's all.
It's Christmas time or Hanukkah
Yes,
time or what?
holiday
Hanukkah already passed.
Christian time.
Hanukkah's coming. It's
Christian
the
time.
same time as Christmas here.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, Christian tree. Oh,
Okay.
Christian tree.
Mary, no, I love Merry Christian.
Merry Christian.
That was so good.
So in closing, does anybody have anything you'd like to share? Any acknowledgements of
Any
yourself?
awarenesses,
Any awarenesses?
anything, any
Anything at all?
ahas, any ahas, any, yeah. takeaways?
There was a lot today to go over with the eggs. So there's, I mean, I personally am going over a lot of it internally right now and thinking about the pieces, how they're connected. So there's I guess the term I'm using I'd use right now is I'm still processing.
Yeah, yeah,
Excellent.
good term. And remembering, you know, that at any time there's a bridge that connects all of them all the time. So you feel like we get lost in the, you know, whatever experience, like we just got to turn 2 degrees to the left and, oh, there's that path. We can choose to come back to this if it gets a little too intense and go back out and be like, yeah, I get to be, you know, here, present in the now, and then also go back and forth across that rainbow bridge.
Yep, and it's perfectly okay to just be with it, right? You don't want to necessarily, oh, it's uncomfortable, let me
Get out of
exit
here.
out. You want to really give yourself that opportunity to be that observer of whatever it is that, you know, that wherever you're at in the egg, and that is, you know, a really powerful first step.
Yeah.
And then with the homework, really bring it home, right? And integrate it.
Yep.
So thank you for your share. Happy that you got to join us today.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
Happy to be back.
Yes.
Welcome.
Welcome back. Welcome back.
I'd like to share something that I recently, I mean, as of yesterday, literally went through this, but so I've had like conflicts in my life, like with a few people over like a week-long period. And yesterday I woke up just like feeling low, just super, super low. And I thought it was still remnants of these situations, even though I feel at some level on another side of it. And I realized that it was the holiday season. That this is a season that my energy, you know, in the past has just become very low. Like certain things happened around the holidays, traumas, and then like not getting to be with my child, you know. I'm back in the United States, but I can't spend any holidays with her. So that's like this stuff that's in me, and it had nothing to do, it might have caused some of that, like like the energy, like pulling conflict closer so I could really feel it. And I get that, and I really felt it, and it's been beautiful to like understand just like what we're learning and how it correlates, and understanding that like, oh, okay, I'm through this process actually, but here on this other side is like this lower unconscious, right, where you talked about traumas coming up for like, look at me, here I am, I need to be noticed. And so because I spent time noticing that and crying and understanding, yeah, I went to the party last night and had a great time, and I didn't think I was going to do that. So grateful, really, really grateful for all of this work that we're doing.
Thank you for sharing.
Yep. Great point about the holidays, right? For a lot of people,
Yeah.
the holidays can be, you know, a difficult time, a grieving time. And so, you know, with that awareness of the egg, right? Just understanding, I'm like, okay, this is coming up, just like you share, Lisa, right? And then still be able to like tune into, you know, some of the higher qualities, and bring some of that forgiveness, some of that love, right? Those qualities of wisdom that can, you know, help you to navigate the difficult times. I know Fraser's not on the call today, but he's, you know, also going to be dealing with, you know, some of that as he's not able to see child. And so, you know, lean on community, you know, lean on us, lean on people who are around, so that you don't have to necessarily go through it alone or isolate yourself. So that we can hold those aspects of the self and make the most of the holiday time. Yeah, so thank you for your sharing, for your work. It's really powerful.
And you know, the awareness too that this time of year is really, if we take it back to ancient civilization, as an aspect of it, it wasn't about going out and playing in the sun. It was about getting your shit ready to go inside, get inward. to do, this inner, in ancient shamanism and everything, there's a wheel of different seasons, right? There's a time to harvest, there's a time to go inward, there's a time to emerge, there's a time to create. So, in societal norms, and this isn't anything to do with transpersonal, but we bring in all these other teachings as well, right? Is like there's an opportunity to go in and not necessarily be afraid of with it, and realize we can light a candle any moment. We can turn on a fireplace, reach out to a friend and have a conversation. All these things. But it's really a time where the days are shorter. There's more dark than there is light. The solstice is this weekend, where it's going to be the shortest day of the year. Is that first? I have that right? Yeah. So we have, the least amount of light and the most amount of dark. And, if we look at all these different esoteric and ancient traditions and technologies, wonder, why am I feeling this way? Things are, especially if you're in the Northeast, like things are just cloudy and cold and all the things. So just noticing that there's a period of time, it doesn't, again, not to identify with that which is happening, but to just notice. And Lisa, I want to acknowledge your share and that you're allowing that to come up, to be able to, say next year, time of year. Now there's a new awareness. Oh, well, this time of year. Now, how can I set myself up to go in? Versus like, oh my God, this thing, and I don't know, and I'm losing myself in it, and just realizing that in a matter of hours, you were having a holiday party with the red tent ladies and all the things and making ornaments. And it was like, what changed? Nothing. It's just the concept, the identification with what it is.
Yep. Exactly. The identification. Boom.
Phew. Yeah. Awesome.
Great.
Caitlin,
Anybody
you look
else?
like you're
Any
in deep
last
thought. I don't
comments?
know. Maybe it's just my own projection of thinking.
I'm
Awesome.
definitely thinking a lot, thinking about how the polarity that I've been experiencing so much. I mean, just a lot of it in general. It was just interesting to me that that's what our first focus is on, which is something I've been working on for the past year of like, okay, but I'm this, but I'm this, but I'm this,
Yeah.
but I'm this.
Yeah.
This really strong, unless it's according to this. All of that, I've been, just like envisioning what it feels like to not be pulled one way or the other. And the thing that keeps coming up for me is unattachment, and not apathy, but just truly, I'm not either of these things because I'm everything. And it's really helped me to prepare myself mentally and emotionally to go into the holidays with family. And personally, I have a lot of tension with my mom. I've been able to just not attach to the judgments I have, and not like go too deep into like this compassion that I have too, like got to be a boundary somewhere, so
Yeah.
it's just been really, really well timed work. So
Can I
yeah,
invite you into something with your share?
I love that.
I heard in my listening, I have a lot of blank with my mom. So
Yeah.
how would you phrase that differently from what we covered today?
Sometimes I experience a lot of tension when I'm around her.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah. Because we can actually speak it into being.
Yeah.
That's how powerful you are. You know what I mean? Like we know in any moment we can choose our reality. So it's like there's tension with my mom. I experience tension when my mom and I are together. Yeah. Speaking of mom, my mom's not on the call.
There are
What the
waves
heck?
of
Oh, that's
tension.
right. She chose to bow out. But yeah, acknowledge your share. Thank you. Yeah.
Yep. Very powerful. I just love how the synchronicities happen, right? Of the material, what we're covering, and then right into the holidays. Great work.
Yep. Anyone else feel like sharing? Tasnova just came off mute.
Yeah, I feel inspired to share. I've been having like a really challenging time surrendering to the polarization homework. I don't know why, but I feel like I may have experienced a aha moment. it, I didn't celebrate a lot of like holiday time with my mom, and still like it's a time of family and getting together. So there's a cloud that comes in, and it seems like every season, so all 4 seasons, there's like a chunk of time where this cloud comes, and I'm still not used to it. And yeah, a lot's been going on. I'm not on the WhatsApp anymore because I got kicked off. Lots going on with my phone, not resolved. Lots going on with my car, which will require more money to be spent that I don't have right now. Just feeling like really out of control. And that plus the cloud, just I feel like I've been in this space of not wanting to feel in order to have some control of something, and also maybe afraid of like losing so much control that I just lose it.
Mm.
So I know the polarity, it's like taking steps back to be aware of these feelings. Like even in the intensity, I'm recognizing through some of your shares that there are some polarities that are very present. And if when I'm willing to look, which I feel will be soon now, I can learn a lot from it. And I guess I wasn't really acknowledging just out loud. I'm having waves of grief during this time. And that kind of just like already supported immediate disidentification to the feeling of intensity. Like even the intensity feelings, I was really identifying with them these past couple of months, and I didn't realize that like I was making it super real. So much so that if I felt like if I looked at them, took 2 steps back to look at them, I'd probably crumble.
Mm.
Yeah, so just got really wrapped up, and um didn't I asked Lisa for support today. I was like, can you support me with the polarity thing? But I saw I was like waiting on it. I felt waves of embarrassment and shame. And yeah, just recognizing what has been happening, kind of just feeling the relief. So
Mhm.
feeling the desire to share, and say it out vulnerably.
Well, yes, there's a lot, right? There's a lot moving through with breakdown in the world in the 3D, but also still moving through the griefs wave from your mother, and so I love that. This identification, of course, is not like, oh my God, I don't feel anything. You're still going to be feeling your feelings, but it does provide a little movement and a little relief, right? That's kind of what I heard you say. Not identify so strongly, right? Because as we share in the slide, right, like when you identify, then control over them. And so, yeah, so that disidentification is key to support, to support with moving through those waves for sure. And then if you need support with the homework, just noticing, right, the resistance and all of it, right? There's been so much, but there's like gold there. Whenever there's resistance, there's just like huge breakthrough on the other side. So any support you need, you can feel free to reach out, and we'll support you.
Yeah, this is a lifetime body of work, right? Just because we cover polarities or egg diagrams like 6 years from now, whoa, boom, I didn't even you know what I mean? Like this is just planting seeds, and they're going to harvest whenever they're ready to harvest for each one of us. We could say there's no need to be ashamed or, or embarrassed, and there's a shameful part of self, which is part of that. This is what we're in discovery of, is like how does that then shameful or embarrassed part of self manifest, and then what are the circumstances in life that get manifested from operating from that place, because there's a karma on that, right? So it's like, okay, I just want to keep coming from it because it's safe. I know, I can understand shame. I know it, so therefore it's safe. So therefore, when I allow myself to spirit, then I I'm just not saying you, but I can keep creating my own reality around that to keep generating shame because I'm projecting it because it's my safe space. Distinct from I am whole, perfect, complete, creative, resourceful, supported, loved, all the things. But then that shameful part of self can't even, it's like walking up to an ashamed little baby version of any one of us, right? And being like, you know how perfect you are? Like, oh my God, but you're just saying that because you know what I mean? So it's like, can't even let in the abundance of the universe that's trying to love us in any moment, because the shame part of us doesn't feel worthy of that. So it's really like, I just want to acknowledge and speak into, thank you for your share. And it's about being graceful and gentle and understanding that this isn't like, oh my God, I didn't do the homework, so now I'm going to be behind. This is a body of work that even after years, we're, there's still stuff that comes up, but at least we have a roadmap of how to, in our conscious mind, have an image that allows us to integrate those parts of self.
Exactly. And then we'll go deeper in subpersonality so you can see what subpersonality that shame is coming from, right? Where in the egg is that
That's the
coming
next step,
from?
module 2. We really start to
So-
really be able to work with these parts of self, name them, envision them, and it really, as Claudia Nieves knows, because she's done some of this work before, this is where the foundational aspects, we start to actually build this new home for our sacred self to live within, right? So good work.
Yep.
Thank you for your share.
Ask me how I know.
Ask me how
Ask me how I know. Exactly.
Yeah, you
We've
know.
been there.
And in community, you know what I mean? Doing this work together, there's something really beautiful and distinct from a group of individuals who are actually in your shares. Each one of you who have shared and will be sharing, are able to listen to one another and hear what's going on. And just, I experienced so many people just being fully present with each one of you who have shared, sharing so much love. There's nothing that you can do wrong. You know what I mean? And any judgments that anybody has come up, that's a fucking subpersonality. Boom, right there. Like, oh, there's the judgy part of self. So then even being aware of like, wow, there's judgment coming up, and what is that touching within me that has that happen? So it like starts to create this compassionate group of individuals that can, this ripple effect that can maybe in some way, shape, or fashion provide a light in a dark room of a little person growing up, a child growing up in these days. It doesn't have to go through these same things. And who am I to control somebody else's journey, right? But at least to be welcoming in the next generation place.
Yeah. And then starting next module, we'll start assigning buddies so that you have someone that you can actually go deeper with in this work. Just
Gotta
wanted to
love the
give the
buddies.
first module is to kind of, be in the receiving and processing of the material. And then, you can go deeper
What are
with
we,
somebody
3
else.
calls in already, and we're tickling apart, tickling away these aspects of things. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, thank you. So much love.
Amazing. Well, we're going to wrap up the call. Thank you all for your presence, those who were here. And we'll be uploading the homework and everything into the module online.
Yep.
And I'll have to remember Tasnova to send you stuff directly until you receive get back in WhatsApp.
Yeah. And in closing, Mr. Cooper's not on the call any longer, but I wanted to give acknowledgement to the feedback. Like, we enjoy if somebody's having any, hey, this technology or the recording or whatever it might be, that we can keep refining it for you, in our service to you, so that we can create, like we created the 2 different WhatsApps, so like all the information doesn't get lost in the weeds. And that was somebody had the courage enough, in this case, John, to say, hey, I'm getting a little hung up here. And boom, there's a mechanism, because we can't see everything with that regard. So it's a continuous basis. Feel free to reach out to us at any time over the holidays if anything comes up, or just a text message away. That's how you symbol for text messaging, because I do that with my thumbs.
Oh, there you
What
go.
the heck? Did you see that? Let's do that again.
What a perfect way
What's
to
happening?
close.
Boom! I text and I make fireworks.
That's awesome. I think it's supposed to be like double
thumbs up.
Double thumbs up. I don't know.
Thank you, Eric, for
Nice.
hanging with us and
Yep.
being in the possibility when you're parenting and listening in. And we hope that this homework really, that you do. I mean, I remember the journal that I had open up with this drawing of the egg diagram with the different colored pencils and I actually wrote down the different aspects of self as these little vines with names on the end. They were flowers that blew. So it can be a very beautiful creative process. Love you all.
Amazing. So much love. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Yes, enjoy the time with your family, and we'll see you January 6th.
Mandatory homework. Home Alone. Christmas Vacation, the Chevy
Vacation.
Chase movie. What's the other one that we watched? Elf.
Elf.
Like
Yeah.
mandatory
A
homework, guys.
Christmas
Come on.
Story, come on.
Christmas.
Die Hard? No Die Hard?
Die Hard. Yes, that's
mean,
actually
Die
funny
Hard.
that always makes it to the Christmas list.
It always does. I was literally gonna say that movie.
Hilarious.